CSS variables, also known as CSS custom properties, provide a way for you to create reusable values in your CSS to help you create consistent designs and layouts on your websites. For example, instead of needing to copy and paste or remember a hex code for a color, you can instead create a reusable CSS variable and use it in the style panel in place of a hard-coded value. CSS variables can be declared at a theme level or scoped to specific elements or components which their child elements can inherit. CSS inheritance is where child elements automatically adopt style properties from their parent elements without you having to explicitly set those properties on the child. For example, if you define a font size on a div element, all elements inside that div will inherit that font size if you do not specifically override it. In the same way, when you define CSS variables on an element, all children of that element will have access to that CSS variable. To create a CSS variable on an element, select the element, here I've selected a button, view the style panel and click the plus button next to CSS variables. In the input field, type a name for your variable. I'm going to use this variable for the button background color, so I'm going to call this variable button-bg. In CSS syntax, CSS variables are prefixed with 2 dashes. If you don't prefix your variable name with 2 dashes, the Nordcraft editor will do it for you. All CSS variables are displayed in the style panel with double dashes and are colored green. When you add a new CSS variable, click the pencil icon to show a dialog which displays the name you specified with those double dashes and a drop-down to choose the syntax for the variable. The syntax defines what type of value the CSS variable is, which determines where it can be used in the style panel. It's also used to tell the browser how animations and transitions move between values. For example, choosing color will ensure this variable shows up in the color picker. For a detailed explanation of the CSS variable syntaxes, you can check out the official Nordcraft documentation or ask the AI assistant. For this CSS variable, let's choose color. Next, let's define the value of the new color variable by clicking on the color swatch and entering the hex code already defined on the button background. Next, to use this CSS variable in the style panel, we can replace the hard-coded hex code on the button background with the variable. And because we gave this variable the color syntax, it will be available to select in the color picker dropdown. 2 quick side notes: when viewing the CSS panel, you'll see CSS variable names wrapped inside the var function, which is how they're used in CSS code syntax. Additionally, you can also set the values of CSS variables via formulas, which we'll cover in a later module. We just defined the CSS variable for the button background on a single element, and as a result, we can only use this variable on that element or its children. In order to make this CSS variable reusable across your entire project, which you'll usually want to do, you can add it to a theme, which are collections of CSS variables you can use to power light and dark themes on your websites or any other theme you want to provide for your users. To add the button background variable to the theme, click on the pencil icon next to the variable on the style panel and click Add to Theme Variables. You'll now be able to see this variable in the theme editor from the bottom bar, confirming the variable has been added to your theme. What's important to note here is that the CSS variable defined on the element is now an override variable, meaning this takes precedence over the theme variable. You'll probably want to delete this override variable unless you need it in special cases. When building out full themes of CSS variables, it's recommended to use the full theme editor. Let's take a closer look. To access the full theme editor, navigate to the project sidebar and find the Themes section, select Default. When you create a new Nordcraft project, you'll see this default pre-built theme which you can modify and take inspiration from. To add a new theme variable, click the plus button in the name column, choose the syntax, and enter a name. click the item in the value column to configure the value. You can group theme variables using double dashes in variable names and also create subgroups in the same way. Some examples of grouped variables have been provided in the default theme for you. Returning to the variable we created for the button background, it could be useful to create a group for all of the button-related variables. To do this, click on the button BG variable name to edit it and add an extra dash in between button and BG. You'll now see a button group in the left sidebar. You can assign themes as a light theme or dark theme, which will automatically show on your websites based on user system preferences, which is powered by the CSS Prefers Color Scheme media query. You can also choose to emulate a theme in the editor without needing to change your system level preferences as you work. To create a new theme, click the plus button at the top right of the theme editor, or you can duplicate a theme. When you have multiple themes, you'll be able to view and compare their values side by side. You also don't need to declare every single variable in each theme, as the variable values always fall back to the default theme values. In practice, this may mean that when your default theme is assigned to the light theme, which includes all variables for fonts and spacing and so on, you'll only need to configure the color variables for a dark theme. As a quick demo, I've created a basic light theme and a dark theme for the button with different background and text colors for the different themes. I'm using the variables in the style panel for the button background and text colors. When working with multiple themes, you can use the theme editor in the bottom bar to emulate the different themes to preview the changes live on the canvas. In the Formulas module, we'll cover how to use events to set different themes in combination with the formula editor to read the theme name, so you can, for example, show different icons or text depending on the currently active theme. Using the theme editor in Nordcraft makes it a breeze to add new themes to your websites. As well as light and dark themes, why not try building a high contrast theme, seasonal themes, or any other theme you can think of? The only limit is your imagination.